Hey guys, what's poppin'? Jacques, Slade here. Hope everyone is living their best life at the moment. If not, why don't you make that happen? But anyway, this is the Nike Kyrie 7. I've had this pair for about a week now, and while I've had my hands on it, I really started to think about what you really need from a sneaker you want to play ball in. So, 1, the fit. It needs to be spot on. You can't really play in a shoe that doesn't fit well. 2, traction. Wearing a shoe that has you slipping all over the court isn't really an option. And finally, comfort. This covers cushioning in my mind because a shoe that you can't wear for a few hours because it starts to hurt your feet isn't really an option that you're gonna wear on the court, which brings us back to this shoe, the Kyrie 7. In my opinion, it fits all of those categories and a few more, but the truth is, you already knew that, and I'll get to that a little later. But for now, let's give this shoe a proper unboxing. Now, like most of you, the unboxing experience is something that I really get into, and Nike and Kyrie did not disappoint with this one. I imagine there will be some special editions of the Kyrie 7 that break the mold, but for the most part, this is the box that you'll get when you cop yourself a pair. Simple black and red lettering that has the Kyrie logo, you have the Nike swoosh, and then the number of the shoe, the Kyrie 7. Once you open the box is when you really get to see the character that Kyrie brings to the table. The entire inside of the box speaks to why Kyrie is one of the most eclectic and electric guys in the game. From images of Kyrie to images of nature to some of the symbolism that is used throughout his line, you see it all on the inside of the box. I would have almost preferred that it was the outside of the box because 1, it would help you differentiate the box from the rest of your collection, and 2, the story has become so important in the world of sneakers today that seeing up front and in your face would have been a nice touch to continue the whole mystery around Kyrie shoes. But enough about the box. The colorway that Nike sent me is called the Sisterhood colorway, and you get a bit of that story on the tissue paper, which is actually a bit thicker than the usual paper you get in the box, and it features this feminine graphic, the Nike swoosh, and some fauna, I guess that's what that is. It's a nice touch for those that know how easily the paper can rip, especially if you take your shoes in and out of the box quite a bit like I am. From talking to Nike, for the actual kicks, the colorway is listed as Hyper Royal and Black, but as you can see, there is a secondary like orange or peach that is here on the outsole, and that's right here on the swoosh as well. And just so we get the pricing and all that out of the way, the colorway, this one, is dropping on November 14th for $130, but Nike is actually dropping what they're calling the preheat colorways on November 11th. There are 4 of them. Special Effects is this colorway, Soundwave is this colorway, Expression of Art is this colorway, and finally Icons of Sport is this colorway. Of the 4, I like the Icons of Sport colorway the most. These are all priced $10 higher at $140 and aren't crazy limited, but there isn't going to be a ton of them floating around. So if you definitely want to get a pair, you should check for it. Then there's the standard black colorway of a shoe. They're calling it BK Black. That's going to drop on the 16th for Nike members, and it's on the 23rd for everyone else. Now, I'm actually doing some math here. That's 6 colorways of the Kyrie 7 in the span of 5 days if you're a Nike Plus member, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. So earlier in the month, I got to attend a virtual launch for the Kyrie 7 with the designer Ben Netzincombe. He has had his hand on the design of the Kyrie for as long as I can remember, and one of the primary things he talked about was Kyrie being fast and allowing him to remain creative on the court. To help push that concept along, he wanted to focus on the weight.
We looked at 4, 5, 6, all the elements that make those shoes great, and then taking all the good things and make the 7 even better. So we knew that the 6 had the zoom back that he loved the most, the zoom turbo in the forefoot. But because of the looks and the way it's constructed, it was a little hefty, and we wanted to remove some of that heft moving to the 7.
So, as you heard Ben say, the plan for the Kyrie 7 was to expand on what they had already achieved through the past designs instead of doing something drastically different. This is actually pretty important, as a lot of time when you see a signature shoe, the expectation is that the shoe will be drastically different and leaps and bounds more comfortable than the last model. Now, while this does happen in some cases, for the most part, the changes from one signature model to the next are iterative. Instead of changing the entire design, they focus on parts that can be improved to reach the apex of that individual silhouette. With the case of Kyrie, that balance also has to take price into account. See, Kyrie's are only $130, and it isn't the budget shoe for Nike, but it also isn't the most expensive signature shoe that the brand offers, and that kind of puts a limit on the technology that could actually be used in the shoe. Keeping that in mind, the cushioning that you get on the 7 is essentially the same thing that you had on the Kyrie 6. The Air Zoom Turbo unit is situated at the forefoot and extends to the toe to give you the responsiveness that you need on the court. Since I would say since a lot of Kyrie's kicks are used both indoors and outdoors, this setup is pretty tuned in. If you like the feel and the movement you got with the 6 and to a lesser extent the 5, you should like this one as well. You get the same articulation that should give your forefoot the additional freedom of movement you wouldn't necessarily get with a solid Zoom bag that covers that entire space. I like to think of it like if this was a cell phone, this is like going from 60 hertz to like a 90 hertz display. Most people probably won't notice it, but if you need it, it's there. Something else that comes from the 6 is actually the shape and feel of the Kyrie 7. Though the outside does look a bit different from the 6 to the 7, the shape and feel is mostly the same in my opinion. There are some slight changes, like for instance here on the shape of the heel. On the 7, you get a bit more relief you see here near the top of the Achilles, and the padding also seems to be a bit thicker, which can be good or bad depending on how you like to wear your shoes. I personally prefer a tighter fit, so I actually welcome the addition of the extra padding near the heel, and it also makes me feel like I'm a bit more secure down here into the heel cup. Though there are some similarities between the 6 and the 7, there are a few areas that I would say diverge and really show the eclectic and artistic side of Kyrie through Ben's design. While many can just be taken as simple aesthetic changes, they are deeper than that and tie into the performance of the shoe. Take for instance the upper materials. For the 7, Ben is using this like layering structure to help shave off some weight of the shoe. The upper layer is made out of 3 different pieces. The color pop on the upper is made out of a simple mesh, but you also have a support layer that's down underneath. Usually these layers are actually hidden, but with this shoe, you can actually see them, especially at the toe on the lateral side, and Ben actually used it as an additional canvas. As you know, with Kyrie, there always seems to be an opportunity to tell a story through color, and with this double layer approach, they have so much more room to play with. And in this instance, if I'm not mistaken, the Sisterhood storytelling that started on the tissue paper when you open the box is actually continued here on the bottom layer in black and white. I'm not sure if that's going to happen with all of the colorways, but you can actually see it here, and in my mind, that makes the packaging more complete, which is pretty cool. Sticking with the upper, we actually have a few more details that focus on the performance of the shoe. You have a large bumper here on the lateral side of the shoe to help with the containment on those quick cuts. And speaking of containment, these bridges, I'm going to call them bridges. I don't think that's their official name, but that is what I'm going to go with. These bridges connect down to the Strobel board, and they connect back up to the laces, and that's going to help contain the forefoot and lock it down to like the sole of the shoe. If you recall, Ben actually used a Velcro strap to achieve this on the Kyrie 6, and it was focused more towards the midfoot, but with this version, the focus is a little lower towards the forefoot. Oh, and quick fun fact, speaking of the forefoot, Kyrie and Ben didn't directly add the number 7 to the shoe in words or by using the number. Instead, they used the number 7 represented in the teeth that you see here on the lateral side. And while we're on the upper, the symbolism actually continues with this model as well. For the rear logos, we have the sun and the moon, which we put together to symbolize balance. You also get sun logos on the top lace eyelet, very small there, small detail. And then one hidden symbol is on the medial side at the rear. Ben recognized this area as a crumple zone, and instead of fighting it, he actually incorporated the seeing eye logo that Kyrie has incorporated into his spiritual life. It's a pretty interesting design decision, as it also hides the creases that you get right here in this area of the shoe, because the design literally already has the lines in it. Okay, one area we haven't talked about yet is actually the outsole. I left it for last because it represents the biggest change between the Kyrie 6 and the 7. Last year, the design focused more on like an artistic version of the traditional herringbone traction. It looked great and played well, but for the 7, Nike Basketball took it to the lab and focused on the data. Working with what Nike calls the NXT Advanced Design Studio, the team used a computational design process that turns real-time game data into a 360-degree traction pattern. This, along with Kyrie's logo, gives us the design that we see on the outsole. It's an interesting mix of like oddly shaped designs at varying heights that seem to track more towards the front of the shoe. The physical outsole rides pretty high up on both the lateral and medial sides of the forefoot, which was an intentional choice based on the way Kyrie plays. Ben has mentioned it on a few occasions now that Kyrie almost puts his foot like flat on the ground, and that's what this is for when making those quick directional changes. And this pattern was built to provide him with the traction that he needs to complete those moves as efficiently as possible. And now, who would have thought that we would be using computers to make us faster and more responsive? I really love this. So for the final touches on the design of the 7, it includes his mother's name and his daughter's name here at the toe of the shoe. As well, there is a quote on the heel that reads, "His legacy is going to live on forever." It's actually a quote that Kyrie wrote about one of his favorite NBA players and mentors, Kobe Bryant. The full quote is, "His seeds that he planted in all of us are going to continue to grow, and his legacy is going to live on forever." But that's probably a lot to try and fit on the bottom of a shoe, so this one here works. Overall, the 7 is a nice upgrade from the Kyrie 6. Nike was able to hold on to a lot of the things we loved about the 6, but also take those learnings from the 4 and the 5 and give us some upgrades to the overall structure and the weight of the shoe. It's one thing to make a shoe light for the sake of being light, but it's something entirely different to use it as a performance advantage that helps you in the game. And I think they were able to achieve that with this model. And yeah, so those are my first impressions. There are a few things I actually left out for you guys to find out on your own when you get your own pair, but besides that, I think that's everything you need to know. Again, this is the Sisterhood colorway, and it drops on 11/14 for $130. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon. Peace.